In this lesson, we will identify events that led nationalist leaders to call for a convention to strengthen the government, summarize the key conflicts at the Constitutional Convention, and explain how they were resolved, and describe the form of government established by the Constitution. The main idea of this lesson is that the Constitutional Convention tried to write a document that would address the weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation and make compromises between the large states and the small states and between the North and South. Shays Rebellion. Daniel Shays was a veteran of the American Revolution who returned home from his farm in western Massachusetts. He carried a heavy debt and was in danger of going to debtor's prison. He and other farmers like him felt that they were victims of too much taxation. They felt that they had given their time and their effort to fight the American Revolution, and now they were in danger of losing their farms, and that was unfair. They wanted the courts closed so that they would not lose their farms to creditors. Daniel Shays led an army of 1,200 farmers to close the courts. The militia is called, 4 rebels are killed, and the rest scatter. This situation showed the founders that something was wrong, that the national government was too limited and too weak to be able to handle situations like Daniel Shays and the Farmers' Rebellion. Many other farmers had the same issue and had debts in every state. One of the nation's biggest problems was trade within the states, and states were quarreling over taxes on goods and navigation rights. So, to try to address these issues, delegates like James Madison and Alexander Hamilton call a meeting in Annapolis, Maryland in September 1786 to discuss trade, but only 5 delegates attend. So another meeting is called and set for Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in 1787. At the Constitutional Convention in May of 1787, delegates from every state but Rhode Island gathered outside the Philadelphia State House. George Washington is elected presiding officer of the convention by a unanimous vote. The delegates decide not to revise the Articles of Confederation, but to form a totally new government. The key conflicts at the convention: strong central government versus strong state government. People who wanted a strong central government felt that authority comes from the consent of the governed, and that the central government, or the federal government, should be stronger than the state government. On the other side of the argument were people who believed that the authority comes from the states, and that the states should remain stronger than the central or the federal government. Big states versus small states also had disagreements. Big states like Virginia wanted a Congress composed of 2 legislatures with membership based on the state's population. And they wanted an elected lower house to then elect the members of the upper house. This was the Virginia plan put forth by James Madison, seen here. Small states like New Jersey wanted a Congress that would be a single legislature where each state only had 1 vote. This was William Patterson's plan, which is pictured here. Roger Sherman drafts what's called the Great Compromise, which merges the 2 plans, and Roger Sherman is pictured here. In the Great Compromise, it brings the Virginia plan and the New Jersey plan together in a compromise. The compromise was that the legislature would have 2 houses, that the House of Representatives would have representation according to state population, but the Senate would have equal representation, and there would be 2 senators per state. North versus South. When it came to counting population, the North and the South had different views. The North felt that slaves should not be counted when deciding the number of delegates, but should be counted when deciding and levying taxes. The South felt that slaves should be counted when determining representation, but not counted when determining taxes. The compromise between the North and South was called the Three-Fifths Compromise. And basically, what it decided was that 3 out of every 5 slaves would be counted. That a slave was 3/5 of a person. Native Americans were not counted at all. And to maintain unity between the North and South, the slave trade was allowed to continue for 20 years, and a fugitive slave clause was put into effect, which said that slaves who fled to another state had to be returned to their original state. The new government that is formed is a form of federalism that divided power between the national and state governments. Each side had different powers, and then there were some shared powers in between. The delegated powers to the national government included regulating interstate and foreign trade, setting standard weights and measures, creating and maintaining the armed forces, copyright and patent laws, post office, foreign policy, creating federal courts, coining money, declaring war, and admitting new states to the Union. Powers reserved to the states were creating corporation laws, regulating trade within the state, establishing and maintaining schools, establishing local governments, making laws about marriage and divorce, conducting elections, and providing for public safety. Powers that were shared between the federal government and the state government were providing for public welfare, administering criminal justice, chartering banks, raising taxes, and borrowing money. That is the federal system. The executive branch and the judicial branch and the legislative branch all work together in the government in a system of checks and balances. The job of the president is to carry out the law. The job of the legislative branch is to make the law, and the job of the judicial branch is to interpret the law. Each branch of government can check and balance the other 2 branches. Pause the video and read through the checks and balances for each individual branch. And we will discuss it more in depth in our lesson in class. The Electoral College. Because there was a fear of the people having too much power in electing the president, the Electoral College is created. The Electoral College is a group of electors chosen by the states to cast ballots for the candidates. The delegates provided a means for changing the Constitution also through the amendment process. The Constitution was sent to the Congress and the states for approval. Each state has a certain number of electoral votes, pictured here on this map. We will discuss the process for the Electoral College in more depth in class.